Welcome. You are about to view a recorded talk of the Mathematical Consciousness Science online seminar series held in 2020. This seminar series aims to explore the role of mathematics in the scientific study of consciousness and hopes to connect researchers who have an interest in this topic. While every session of the seminar consists of a talk and discussions, the latter are not recorded and the following will only contain the talk. We hope you will enjoy it. For further information, please visit our website, seminar.math-consciousness.org.
First, I want to thank the organizers of this beautiful seminar for having invited me, especially since I am especially a pure mathematician and not at all a philosopher, a neuroscientist, even if I use some things. I know a little of that, but I'm not a specialist at all, and so I might make errors in these fields. So, math, if you want, it means memory evolutive neural system. And it's an abbreviation for memory evolutive neural system, and we generally call it math. In French, but math also is Latin word, if you want, for the spirit. And so math is, in fact, an application of the memory evolutive systems, which we have developed with Jean-Paul van Brommersch since the late 90s. And this Jean-Paul van Brommersch is a physician, in fact. So, but memory evolutive system have to be developed, have required many introducing many notions of category theories. Since I am a somewhat specialist of category theory, and the category theory notions who existed were not well adapted to living systems such as biologic or social systems, and so I had to introduce new notions tailored, for instance, the notion of evolutive system and also the notion of hierarchical category. Indeed, math, we pronounce math for the memory evolutive system, is so a model for biological or social system with a hierarchy of components, and such that a component of a given level is the co-limit of a pattern of components of lower levels. And it is also at the same time the multi-agent self-organized system in which there are co-regulators, which each work with their own as agents, with their own temporality and logic. Now, math is an application of this math to the case of a neurocognitive system. What does it mean? It means that it is a system. So you have at the lower level, you have a math, so a hierarchical system, we're saying. At the level 0, we have the neural system, a model of the neural system of an individual. And the higher level objects are called category neurons, and they represent co-limit or integration or binding, if you want, of patterns of activated neural of the neural system. So we will define this hierarchy of cat neurons, which are representing especially objects, mental objects. So they model mental objects through the way they activate patterns of neurons. So if you want, the cat neurons, they are a system where there are also the neurons, are exactly the represent, model the mental objects in the sense of Sanjou. So that mass can be seen at the base. You have you model the neurons at all the other levels. You have a model of mental objects and an algebra of mental objects, as was asked for by Sanjou very long ago. And the number of levels increase over time, so that there is the formation of a robust and flexible memory, and with a higher level of the memory, which will be called archetypal core, which will act as a motor to develop a conscious process. So if some people here don't have heard of category, I will just quickly give the definition of a category. A graph is just, as you have here, is just a set of objects and some rows between them, which are edge of rows between them, and with possibility of multiple rows between two objects and so on. In a category, it's such a graph already, but which is equipped with a composition law, which associates to two successive rows, for instance, F here and G, a new row from A to C, which is called a G. So, and this composition is associative, and each object has an identity. This is the definition of a category. Now, when we have a graph, we can always construct a category keeping the same objects, but taking as rows the paths of the graph. That is a sequence of successive rows. And this category and the composition law is given by convolution of paths. So to each graph, we can associate a category, but a category in general is the quotient of the graph of its path by an equivalence relation saying that A and B and between categories, we have functors. A functor from a category C to a category K is a graph homomorphism, but which is compatible with the composition law and with the identity. And we have to look often in the definition of an evolutive system to the notion of a partial functor. What I call a partial functor is just a functor which is not defined completely on K, but only on a full subcategory of K. Now we come to the Schiff and the evolutive system of neurons. Now, if we want to study the neurons of an individual, we'll have a problem, because what does it mean exactly? If you look at a neuron, you can look at it as something which lives for some time. You see, the neuron, here is a time. We denote by here the timeline of the neural system. So at the neuron N exists at a number of time, here, for instance, up to here, but not always. Here, the neuron N prime last a little longer, and so on. So if we want to define a category of neurons, we have to take account of on what at what time we are, what time, on which interval of time we are, because we cannot we know that we have many neurons which are dying every day, so it's not the same neuron. You see here, for instance, we have a neuron here, and later it does not more exist. Here we have a neuron which still remains here, but after that it will no more exist, and so on. So if we want to define a category, we have to specify exactly on what interval of time we are looking for. So let us look at an interval I from t to t prime in the timeline. So we have some neurons, for example, the N was support. The support is the largest, longer time during which the neuron exists. We have some neurons which whose support is contained in I. For instance, here we have the N and the N prime. There, the support is contained. Here, this one not, because there is no more neurons here, and so on. So, an object of the category NER I will be the restriction of the neuron N on the interval I. And we have an over here. And what we have as morphism in the category, the rows in the categories, will be synaptic paths between them. It's the same thing for synaptic paths and for generally synapses, that for neurons, they exist only on some interval of times. So in NER-E, the object is the restriction of a neuron which exists on I, and the rows are the synaptic paths which exist on the same interval I. Now, the proposition, it means that if we do this for each interval I of t, and in particular for each open interval since t is part of R, and it has, we put on it the topology induced by R. If we take the category of neuron we have just defined on each interval I, which is open, this form a sheaf. And it's called the sheaf of categories. Now, we can also look to what exists at a given time. At a given time t, we have, in particular, the same, if we take for I the interval reduced to the point t, we have the category NER-T. And this category, we can look at this category. We have the category NER-T prime at T prime, and what I have defined shows that there is a functor from NER-T to NER-T prime, which is called the NER-T prime, which is in fact not a functor defined everywhere on NER-T, but only on the neurons which will not which will have been suppressed at T prime. So we have the NER-T prime is only a partial functor from a full subcategory of NER-T, which will correspond to the only to the points, to the neurons and synaptic path, which are still living at T prime. And if we look at the different functors, partial functors near T prime, we obtain what we have called an evolutive system, and it will be the evolutive system of neuron, NER, which will be a sub-evolutive system of mass. Now, I will precise in categorical terms what means an evolutive system. You see, it's just because of this fact that we have not, if we had just pre-shift on T, on the category of defining the order on T, we would have a functor from T to T prime, so from the category, the entire category on T to that on T prime. But here, as I've said, we have seen for the neurons, we have only a partial functor because we have lost of different things. Why do we need this? Because if you think for instance, in biological system, and as we have seen for the neurons, at a given time, there are many things which should go outside, that is, which are suppressed or lost by the system. So we have really to have only partial functors. It's this which makes the difference between an evolutive system and pre-shift on the T. And so an evolutive system is the data of timeline, so an interval of the real. For each T category, which we call the category configuration category as T, it was the category of neurons as T in the case of the neuron, and we have between T and T prime a partial functor from the category at T to the category at T prime, and we call it the transition from cat T to cat T prime. And to have something which is well defined, if it was a pre-shift, it will be just functor from the category of pairs of defining the order of T to the category of functors between categories, category cat, generally. But here we have partial functors, but partial functors between categories also form a category. So the best definition an evolutive system K is the definition of the data of a category of defining the order of an interval of R, T rho, and a partial functor, real functor from K to the category of partial functors sending T on cat. And transition, the T prime and transition. That is a definition of an evolutive system. So you see, it's exactly what we have seen before for the neuron. Now, when we have, in the first case, we have taken the neurons and we have deduced from it something which will be an evolutive system. But here we are in the other sense. We begin by defining the evolutive system, and then having the evolutive system, we want to find a new, what I have said is the shift associated to the neurons. How is it? We define the component, a component N of the evolutive system is defined by a maximal family of elements NT, which define NT, entry and so on, which are related by transition. So you see the idea, you have the the value of the component here is transmitted here by the transition and so on everywhere. So here we see we have the component n, which goes on yet here, this component stops here. So, and now we can do exactly what we have done with the neurons before. We had looked at the neurons which are defined only, which are defined at least on the interval E, and we define the category which will be then called Ki, which correspond, which are for objects, the components which go from T to T prime, and the same for the links between components. And these define Schiff, and it's analog of Schiff we have seen in the case of neuron, when we consider for each open interval the neurons whose support contains the interval, and so we have a Schiff, and which has a particular, it's not any Schiff because it's a Schiff of categories, but which have a particularity, so that we have not two different neurons which can be intersect one another. So it's the condition which I indicate is for each element at each element between T and T prime, we have an injective map from the category Ki on the stack of the Schiff at this point. And in fact, an important result is that every Schiff which satisfies this principle is associated to an evolutive system. So you see, an evolutive system, we can look at it either as a family of categories with partial functors between them, or as a Schiff, Schiff define the presence of this evolutive system. Now, we know that when we want to study how mental objects are formed, generally, we have to consider pattern of neurons, neuronal patterns. In fact, it's already, in the neural system, it's already had in the 1949, which has find that the main role in the dynamic of the neural system is obtained by what is called cell assemblies, synchronous cell assemblies. And it says that any frequently represented particular stimulation will lead to the slow development of a cell assembly capable of acting briefly as a closed system. And he also had the Hebb rule for synaptic plasticity, meaning that if we have two neurons related by a synapse, and now if both neurons are activated simultaneously, the strength of the synapse will be increasing. So now, how can we transmit? And since then, Hebb has been accepted, and there have been, but instead of calling them cell assembly, it is also question of synaptic patterns, activity patterns, neuronal groups for Edelman, for instance, but all these terms meaning the data of some neurons and some synapse or synaptic path between them. And so, and the idea is how can we look at this in the case the first idea would be that we want to integrate this pattern, that the object, the mental object, which is activated by, which activates this pattern, should be in some way found as the integration of this pattern in a unique object. And this is exactly what is called a colimit in category theory. But in fact, what would be very easy is if such a neuronal pattern, activated neuronal pattern, would have a colimit in the category of neurons. But in the category NeurI, which we have defined it as a category of paths of the graph of neuron, and in the category of paths of a graph, or more generally, free category, there is only very few patterns which admit a colimit. This I had completely shown what are these patterns, and effectively it is known that generally if you have, say for instance, grandmother, the mental object representing grandmother, we know that there is no grandmother neuron generally. This was very well discussed long ago, in particular by Barlow. And so we cannot say that we just have these patterns which are integrated in something inside the neuron. And this is the reason for which we have to go outside the neuron. And this is what I do here. In fact, we cannot find inside the category of neurons something which represents, which integrates or binds the assembly, but we can have it outside, and this will be the way we are constructing the category neurons, which will be the objects of mass. Now, let us recall what is the colimit of a pattern in category. So, in pure category, we have a pattern, which is also called a diagram, or if you prefer, just now subgraph, which is a slightly more particular, but it is much sufficient for what we do. P in a category consists of the data of a family of objects, Pi, and some distinguished morphism from Pi to F, from Pi to Pg. And a cone from P to A is a family of links here. So Si and Sg, from each E we have a morphism from Pi to A for a given A, and so that we have this morphism to A are correlated by the distinguishing here, meaning that we have a commutative triangle here. If we compose F with the Si, we'll find the Si. You see, it's here that you must must use categories, because you cannot do this in graph since we have no composition law in graph. So I cannot define a cone really in a cone on a pattern if I was only in a graph. It's this the difference between the reason for which categories have been introduced. For a long time, people did not think that categories were useful to model neuronal system, or in general biological system, and so on. I remember a conversation I had with MacLean, who is one of the introductor of categories, and it shows that in 1992, and then he thought that it was not necessary to use categories, and but in fact it's probably what we have really give to for the study of the neuronal system, and in general for biological system, is the fact to use explicitly not only categories, but what is called in category theory the co-limit operation, which was introduced by Kahn in 1958. What does it mean? You see, we can think of a cone with base P and A as a kind, something like each A in some way send information through the SI to A. And the distinguishing say that this information are well partaken by the different links, distinguished links of the pattern. So we can think, and in fact in our book we also use the term of collective link from P to A for a cone. And now, if you think of that, the co-limit will be one. This could be, there could be cones with too many over A, but the co-limit exists if there exists a cone, particular cone called the co-limit cone from P to C, or CP for co-limit P, which has the particular, which is in some way a universal solution to the pattern to find a cone towards something. That is, it is a co-limit. If there is such a cone, with Ci here, which has a property that for each other cone toward NA, we have the unique morphism S, which integrate all the distinguished links of the pattern P, and which satisfy Ci composed with S gives the Si for each. So you see the co-limit, if you think of the morphism as transporting some information, the co-limit in some way is really integrate all the integrates all the information contained in P, in CP. It is integrated, and so. This information. So, and naturally, you see that there is a unique co-limit, if it exists, up to an isomorphism, effectively, but generally it is unique up to an isomorphism. Now, so now we have what we call donc the colimit. We also call it the binding of the pattern or the integration of the pattern. Now, long ago, neuroscientists had raised the problem of binding, the binding problem. For instance, Van Malsburg and Bienenstock in the 80s probably. And what does it mean? They said it's, well, we know that a mental object in some way is represented by a pattern, a neuronal pattern, but now admit that we have two mental objects, CQ and CP, so defined, and what arise for what are then the good way to find morphism, or at least what replaces the synapse between neurons for patterns of for these patterns once they have been integrated. Now, we have been able to define it. It will be defined as follows. If we have two patterns, Q and P, we define a cluster between from Q to P as a family of morphisms. I am just in a category here. You can take, for instance, the category of neurons if you want, but also category mass and so on. So a cluster from Q to P is a family of links between components of Q to components of P, which have the property for each QK, we have at least one morphism in the cluster arriving to a PI. And if there are several ones, they are separated by zigzag of morphism in P. And this is a maximal family having this property is called a cluster. Now, if we have such a cluster, and if we have integrated Q in CQ and P in CP, we can find. We easily prove that there exists a unique J, which we call the binding link from Q to P, and which has the property that the composite of this whole cluster with this cone here is linked to this cone here by G goes from CQ to CP, and is such that the composite of this cone with G is the same as the composite of this with C. So you see the binding link, if we consider that CP correspond to integration of the information contained in P, now CQ, the information contained in Q, and now we have a binding link if we have also it's a morphism which integrates all the information contained in the cluster connecting Q to P. And now we have a particular case which is very important since and has been known for very long, since already Aristotle has said that more than the sum of its parts. A system is more than the sum of its parts. Why? Here, if I take for Q, just the objects of P. You see, the PI. So the Q has no morphism at all. It has just objects, and these objects are those are all the PI. Now, if there is an integration of that, it's what we call the colimit of such a pattern in which there are no morphisms, there are only the objects, is called the sum of the PI. So in this case, if we have the sum, if we have P, and we take the sum here, donc for Q, we take the cluster is just generated by the identities, since here the objects of Q are identities of PI, it is just generated by these identities. So we have from the sum of the PI to the colimit of P, we have the J, the binding link, will be called the comparison between the sum and the colimit. So this comparison morphism is important. It measures the lack of coherence of P. It explains the difference if we enter the information integrated, which is inside the P, it's integrated by CP. And if we only take the object, we have much less information, and it's exactly what measures the C. And in fact, it seems that Koch in some has equated le phi of Tononi of the information, the integrated information of Tononi. It seems that it has called this phi. It represents phi by this link, which he speak of as a lack of synergy. Well, now we have this. Now, in fact, there is up to now we have considered a pattern, and now we have decided we can have for objects in mass the integration of the pattern into its colimit. Well, but we must take account of another property of the neural system. And I think this property is what Edelman has called the degeneracy of the neural code. And I am surprised to see that in the different papers on the neural system, who want to study neural system, information through information theory or other things, I have not seen people really taking account of this. Or in mass, you'll see that it is the essential property, in fact, in mass, because it is a property we will allow to have something really emergent. It is at the base of the emergence property of the mental in comparison with the physical. What does it do? It introduces the degeneracy of the neural code by more than one combination of neuronal groups can yield a particular output, and a given single group can participate in more than one kind of signaling function. Is in his book. Later, with Galli, they have generalized this to the notion of degeneracy in biological system, and now in biology, it seems that the degeneracy of biological system is well known. But when Edelman first introduced this notion, it seems really new, and the word degeneracy, personally, I don't like it, and it's the reason for which when we have tried to translate it in a categorical language, we have called it the multiplicity principle rather than the degeneracy principle. So, translated in category theory, what does it say? It says that it says that if we have we can have two patterns P and P prime, which have the same colimit C. You see, two neuronal groups may have the same function. More than one combination of patterns, so more than one pattern can give a particular signaldic function. It's exactly what means that what is translated by saying that the two cones have the same colimit. But in fact, naturally, if we are in a category, we can always have two patterns which have the same colimit. For example, if they are really isomorphic, so necessarily they will have the same colimit. But here we want two patterns which are not equivalent. And not equivalent will be translated by the fact that there is no cluster from P to P prime or from P prime to P, which have for binding the identity of C. So this, and when we have a C which has this property, we call it a multifaceted component. And so if we apply here by taking P and P prime in neur I, in the category of neurons, and here C is in the category mass, then it means effectively that C becomes what we have called cat neuron, so it's a multifaceted cat neuron. So we have it allows, degeneracy allows the existence of multifaceted cat neurons. Which means if we think of C as representing, as a model for mental object or stimulus and so on, it means that the same stimulus, depending on the time, depending on different reasons, can be activated by either P or P prime. That is the main property which makes, in particular, the fact that a mental object is not in one-one correspondence with a physical object, since here we see it can be, if it is multifaceted, it can be in one-one, it is not in one-one correspondence, but there are two possible patterns of neuron which correspond to it. And the existence of such MP lead to the emergence of new links. We have said when we have two patterns, we take the colimits, we have a cluster between the pattern, and we obtained here, we obtained a binding link between their colimit. Here also. And here I suppose that we have two patterns, Q and P, which have the same colimit C. Now, if we look at the here, and so say is multifaceted, we have the binding link J prime and the binding link J. But now we must have a composite of these two morphisms, since we are in a category. And now this such a link, we call it a multipart link. Why is it interesting? If we suppose, let us suppose that K0 is the category Nuri. And this here, the cat is the category mass. Now, what does mean this multipart link? We can say that it emerges here. Why? Because if, let us suppose somebody, an observer, who only sees the subcategory K0 of K. He looks at that, he sees K prime, the cluster, and necessarily from that, if he knows that there is, when he looks at K, he compares K0 to the whole of K. In some way, he says that CQ in some way has integrated Q, donc in some way has emerged as an integration of Q. In the same, in this here, no problem. He can find here the binding link. It's completely defined by data on K0, and the same here. But now, if he looks at this multi-part link, the only reason for which it exists, it's because we want that it is, we have a category. But we cannot look in the observer in K0 cannot see anything which link Q and ici Q prime and P prime. We have no morphism from an element of Q prime to P prime, since here we have nothing, no cluster here in between these two patterns. So this, but anyway, so we can say that here we have a weak emergence of the colimit. If we have a pattern, the integration of the pattern can be seen from the emergent, a weak emergence. We had asked for it, so it has appeared. Here also. But if we are here for the observer of K0 to imagine that we have something, it would necessarily use the fact that the two patterns Q and P are that C is a multifaceted thing, that is, that these two patterns have the same colimit. But suppose, so naturally, from the rules of category theory and so on, the multipart link GG prime, you can see that it has emerged this. But in fact, if he wants to verify it, there is a problem, because to realize that Q and P have the same colimit means to look at any cone in K0 of base Q and P and to see that there is really one-one correspondence between the cone of base P and the cone of base Q. It's this we says the colimit. It's that for all the cone we have the same thing. So we see that if the observer wants to verify it, and if the category has a very large number of objects, it cannot do it in a finite time. So in some way, we can say that the multipart link is weak emergence as long as we we suppose that the two patterns have the same colimit, but otherwise we can only say that they have some problems, that we can only say that there is a global emergence because we cannot verify it. It's Brian Johnson which had explained this kind of emergence in 2010. And now this is exactly what arrives in the complexification process. So in the complexification process, we have the category so K0, and on K0 we give two P prime and Q prime which have no colimit, and we suppose that we have two colimit cones which have the same C. And the complexification process is to construct a category in which we have solved this problem in the best way, that is the universal solution of the decomplexification process. And this is the process which we will have to apply several times in NUR to construct mass from NUR. Indeed, in the general structure of mass, we have said initially we have constructed cat neurons of level 1 as colimit of neuronal patterns, but we can, and this corresponds to synchronic complexification process. And now we can, then when we have such cat neuron, we can reiterate the same process and we have cat neurons of level 2 and so on. And so we have a whole family of cat neurons, and with the multipart link between them. And so we have hierarchical categories of cat neurons, hierarchical being hierarchical if its objects are distributed in different levels, so that each object of a given level is the colimit of at least one pattern of objects of lower levels. And in this way, C being the colimit of at least one P, each PI colimit of one link here, and so on, we have a ramification down to the level 0. And in particular, in mass, if we have a category neuron of level n plus 1, then we will have such a ramification down to the level of neuron, level 0, which is the level of neurons. And so we have to say we can associate the base of this ramification corresponding to all the patterns which are in level 0. Now, we can define by comparison with the Kolmogorov-Chaitin complexity, the order of complexity of a cat neuron, or more generally, in a hierarchical category of an object C, it's defined as the smallest length of a ramification from C to the level 0. In particular, if we have each object of C as unique factor is of level 1 or 0, it means that either it is in level 0 or it has just one, it is obtained as a composite of a large pattern of level 0. And this would exactly represent what is called pure reductionism. But in mass, it's not what arrives because of the MP. We have what Mario Bung calls an emergentist reductionism, meaning that we have effectively, we have object C of level more than 1, of order complexity of more than 1. So mass results from an emergentist reductionism. Now, for the moment, we have not looked at the dynamic of mass. In fact, up to now, we have had complexification over a given interval of time, so of the category NUR I, and which have been a hierarchy over the category NUR I. but now we have also this order is in fact necessitates the construction, the integration of a pattern into its co-limit necessitates some time. So in fact, if we have begun over I, the result will be later. So in the dynamic commence, the transition from an instant t to t prime is generated by complexification process, which lead to the diachronic emergence of cat neurons of increasing levels and multi-part links between them. And it's exactly in this way that we can construct the complexification through several complexifications, the memory of the system, we can find more and more cat neurons in this way. So, and Mince develop a robust, though flexible hierarchical memory mem with multifaceted records of increasing complexity levels. And this is done internally to Mince because it is self-organized by different it acts as a multi-agent system via a net of co-regulators which are based on different specialist brain modules. And they modulate the dynamical through their competitive or conflicting interaction. Each year works on its own landscape, stepwise, as a hybrid dynamic system, and this on its landscape, which correspond to the information which we can, during one of its steps, obtain from the system. And the comments of the differentiator sent at a given time can be conflicting, and thus so that we need an interplay between their different comments, and there can be structure for some. Now, how this can lead to the idea of consciousness. First, there is in the brain a structural core, which is important, which has been existence of a structural core has been found by Hagman et al. In 2008, which and this part of the neuronal system, which be this structural code, the base, in fact, of which will allow to have by successive complexification the archetypal core. So we take all the we take all the cat neuron. In fact, we show that in Mince, we will, if we take in the memory, there are some records of which are higher level cat neurons, which are based, the base of one of their ramification is in the structural core. And they correspond this to memories, to part of the memory, the more personal, which lasts the most for a long time. And as they develop fast and strong links because of the Haber rule, and which can activate when they are activated, for instance, by attention. The activation can go down through decomposition of co-limit into the pattern it integrates and can be and we have intentional CRs, which are higher level CRs, based on Crick's conscious units, for instance, in the associative cortex, and which are really directly connected to the archetypal core. And we have this co-regulator constitute a kind of CS agent network acting as a macro co-regulator. And they allows to form the, you see, we have the activation goes from here, goes lower in the system down to the neurons in lower, and we construct in this way a macro landscape which corresponds a little to what is called the global workspace, which acts in the same way, which is constructed by transmitting the information from arrived to assay to lower levels, so with non-unconscious part, and which is then retroactively sent to this intentional CRs. And in this macro landscape, we can develop a retrospection and a prospection process, which can be related to the process of retention and protention proposed by Searle. And now we have conscious process. How with the conscious process will arrive? If we have an unexpected or striking event, S, which activates the attention because it is unexpected, then the attention augments. It leads to activation of AAC. This activation then, as we have explained, is sent back, is gone to intentional CRs, which collaborate to form the macro landscape. And this macro landscape can be related to lower CRs by a retrospection process, which allows, since there is some time due to the time to go from an element of a higher level cat neuron to the lower by a ramification to lower CR, it can retrospectively, by abduction, find what has been already done long before. And then after that, it can develop, this is a retrospection process, so that to find, for example, the cause, if S is the cause of a fracture in a CR, it can be found by the retrospection process, and then it can be solved, for example, to correct by a prospection process always done in the ML. And so this we will have conscious process in the sense of a higher order theory of consciousness, meaning that it's conscious is a consciousness in the sense of Nietzsche, for example, to be conscious of something. The something activates the air, which leads to the construction of a macro landscape, and then which allows to go on and to repair, to understand what has been the problem, and can then try to have the solution. So this is the conclusion. So, and here there is a table which shows the difference, that how the correspondence between mental states or objects, how they are translated in mass, and to what thing of brain they correspond. And so, in conclusion, Mans proposed a theory of mind in which a hierarchy of mental objects and process emerges from the functioning of the brain, and which show how the degeneracy property translated by MP is the characteristic which allows the emergence of many cat neuron of the development of the archetypal cone with higher level cat neuron, and this archetypal cone, which itself acts as a model for the construction of a macro landscape and to develop, in which can be developed higher conscious cognitive process and even up to consciousness. And so here are some information for some reprints which can be found